Hello and welcome to ABW Radio. I have a mouthful of chocolate because I'm a professional. I am your host, Kris, and this evening I'm joined by two of my newbies who are, well, they'll soon be my old bees, but they can't be because that's John's job. I've got Josh and I've got Ellis with me. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Kris. Hope you enjoyed the game.
Good evening. It's good to be back after a little hiatus. Not your good friend Pep.
Yes, oh yes, indeed. And Josh, I know what you're doing there. Behave yourself. Right. Okay. So we are obviously live on YouTube as we speak. So good evening to everybody in the chat room. See some familiar names there. Marble Horse TV. Hey, Jimmy. Hello, Jimmy and Nguna. Some bloke called Danny the Guffper. I don't know who that prat is. Lazy Python, Dan Cronin. Arsenal Motto, Stefan Selb, big Stefan, loads of people. So welcome to you all. You're all very, very welcome. Right, let's get some initial thoughts then. Preston 1, Arsenal 2. Christ, we got there in the end, didn't we? Ellis, what was your thoughts on the lineup and the overall performance?
The lineup, I wasn't really massively surprised with it. I thought there might be a bit more rotation, but other than Maitland-Niles, it was a pretty strong lineup. And not really too many shocks there. Yeah, of course. I wasn't too keen on, well, don't want to dig anyone out, but the sort of centre-back partnership between Mustafi and Gabriel, when I first saw that, I thought, well, this go a bit dodgy, and then I saw Gabriel was probably on his preferred position on the left of the centre-backs, and I thought, well, maybe he might show he's better at that position, but it didn't really turn out that way, especially in the first half. Initial reaction to the performance was just a bit... It sort of started how we started against Bournemouth, really. It's been the last two games. We just haven't really started very well at all. We've sort of been nervous. Nothing seems to be going our way. We're turning over the ball in all positions all over the pitch, high up, and then even in our own half, and just making it hard for ourselves. And we made Preston look good, really, and I don't think they particularly played that well. I just think we performed quite badly, but came out for the second half and we looked like a different team and eventually got the 2 goals that we needed to go through to the next stage. So I'm not overly positive about the result, but at the end of the day, all you can ask for is to win the game, and we did that. So hey ho.
Yeah, true that. It was a bit of a slog, wasn't it? I got quite a few views on the opposition and a certain Arsenal defender, but we'll come on to that later on. What was your thoughts, Josh? Were you surprised by any of the selections or non-selections? And it was a bit of a tale of two halves for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was surprised to see that we created almost a very weak bench by starting such a strong starting lineup. I would have thought we'd have seen someone like the Jeff come in over someone like Lucas or Giroud. I didn't expect Giroud to be a part of today's proceedings, but it turned out to be a good thing he was. But yeah, a little bit worried about the performance of Ashley Maitland-Niles, who generally wasn't... He doesn't look like a right back at all, especially with how he tracks runners. He tracks them like he's a right winger, kind of gives up halfway through and hopes the centre back will cover him. Otherwise, yeah, we made it difficult, and it's appearing to become the Arsenal way, making it difficult. But at least we're in the draw for the next round. Yeah,
that is ultimately what you need from these games. And before we go into Arsenal, I was wondering actually as we started this game, the coverage or the games that they chose for TV, really good picks there. Man City 5-0, Man United 4-0. I was thinking, fucking hell, what? I would genuinely love to have watched a lower league team today. Really would have. I'd have enjoyed that. But hey, that's the stupid broadcasters in the world we live in. But never mind. Ellis, first sort of 10-15 minutes. Thoughts?
Yeah, echo what I said and just the general feeling of the first half. We just didn't really start. Did they score in the 8th minute, or was it a bit later? I don't know when they scored, but was it? Well, whenever it was quite early on anyway. And we just kept, I don't know, the midfield wasn't there. They were bypassing our midfield too easily. The back four were a bit all over the place. I know you want to come and talk about Maitland-Niles a bit later. He didn't look very good today, but to be honest, neither of the four did at the back there. Sort of the midfield and the back four were a bit woeful, really. Nothing was sort of working. You had Gabriel sort of obviously he was involved quite heavily in the first goal, playing the guy on side for Preston. You had Mustafi, who was trying the sort of balls that he normally tries and does sort of get away with, but they weren't coming off. He was just getting intercepted. He was going sort of in for those sort of all or nothing tackles, and he wasn't really coming out with the ball, so that wasn't very good. And we were just everything we seemed to try didn't seem to work. We looked nervous as well when we turned over possession. We just didn't look up for it. And Preston, as soon as they got that initial goal, there was a good 10 minutes in that first half where we looked like the Championship side and they looked like the Premier League side. They were sort of all over us, and there was nothing we could really do. And they could have been 3-4 goals up by half time. Luckily they weren't, and we did go on eventually to win it. But yeah, we just didn't look up for it. It's some sort of mental block with us at the moment. In the last 2 games we started, it's just we've not looked up for a game. We've just looked a bit nervous, and nothing we seem to be trying to work. And I know you can go back to the last game and say we did end up drawing and got 3 goals back, and we've obviously gone on and won this. So there is some sort of good attitude there to come back from like a goal down or even 3 goals down in the previous game. So there is some sort of fight in our squad, but it's just the way we're starting games at the moment. That's what's really letting us down. If we could start it a bit better, then we wouldn't be putting ourselves in these sort of shit positions that we have in the last 2 games.
Yeah, I think both Aaron Ramsey and Olivier Giroud touched on that after the game about the sort of not starting well. Made some interesting comments that I'm sure people will get their teeth into later on as well, which I'll bring up. But Josh, obviously the opening goal, just sort of talk me through your thoughts of that, because I've had a quick look back at it, having missed it at the exact time. So I was just getting in the door as it went in. Lovely job. But poor defending, poor decision making. Just really, really poor, wasn't it? I mean, it's a good finish and whatnot, but that isn't how you want to start a game against a lower league side away from home on FA Cup day, is it?
No, they came at us incredibly aggressively at the beginning of the game, which you should expect from a team that is a lot lower down, and this is their cup final for them, to speak for their season. They're mid-table in the Championship, and it's going to be their time where they can show what they can do. I think, yeah, Gabriel was playing them on side. There was a little bit of unluckiness with the goal, with how the second ball just ends up at the feet of their striker. But before that, it's just a clusterfuck of just mistake after mistake from the whole back 4 there and the midfield for not tracking the runners.
It's a real worry, like the speed they cut through us, and the midfield area as well, which there's quite a lot to get into tonight. So we'll sort of whip through the game and then see if we can find some bits and bobs to talk about. I say find, we will find. I will find them, trust me. Okay, so 1-0 down, Ellis. Really, let's be perfectly honest, however foully and shitty they were, because I'll come on to Preston later on. You'll have your 5 minutes on Preston, don't you worry. But they should have been 3 up, shouldn't they? They missed 2 very good chances. There was an incorrect offside call, or they cocked it up anyway. And then there was the chance where he put it across goal, and I think it was blocked off Mustafi from the header. In fact, I think there might have even been 3 chances. Either way, they could have been out of sight by half time, couldn't they? What was your thoughts as we went in 1-0 down at the break?
I think initially angry at the fact that they had so many chances and we were already 1-0 down from so early on. And like you said, there was 3 chances they could have had, and they could have even gone in 4-0 up at half time, which is ridiculous to think that a side of Arsenal's quality, especially the sort of team they put out, there's only one real player there that isn't really a sort of starter or at least a bench for the Premier League. So you'd think that we should easily be either at level at half time or winning it quite considerably, but that wasn't the case. But then you start to think, well, actually, I was a bit relieved. It could have been a lot worse. 1-0 down. You think Arsenal got enough quality to come back from that. 3 or 4-0 down, even though we'd come back from 3-0 down against Bournemouth, you'd worry for us at half time if we were that many goals down. Yeah, it was like I said, there's just some sort of block there. I don't really know what it is. It just our players look frightened on the ball, and you take out 2 players of the quality of Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez, and they just don't seem up for it. I thought, apart from Ramsey's goal, some of the stuff he was trying wasn't really working. His passes were going astray. He was losing possession. Xhaka as well wasn't amazing. I didn't think he really done much. So a lot of people wanted to see that sort of partnership in midfield, but it didn't really work too greatly especially in the first half. Obviously, we weren't too bad in the second half. We looked like a different team, and it's the old cliche of a game of two halves. But we were incredibly lucky not to be more goals down at half time. If we'd been more, then I would have worried seriously if we'd gone through to the next round.
Yeah, some good points there. And Josh, having got away with it, let's be honest, in that first half, we came out second half regrouped slightly. We did look a little bit sharper fairly quickly, really, into that second half, and it was rewarded with a goal pretty much straight from the off. Brilliant piece of play from Alex Iwobi, who's I'm really pleased for him because he's proving these utter mongs that keep saying, "Oh, he's never going to make it." Really? Yeah, because you know that, don't you, idiots? Anyway, playing very, very well. All of a sudden, he seems to have found his form, and it was not only a good piece of footwork, but the ability to sort of hold the ball up, hold off the defenders, before laying it into the path of Aaron Ramsey, who, really, if you watch it back, it looks like his first touch is slightly away from him, and that inadvertently sets it up with the opportunity to just smash through it and rocket it into the net. So, your thoughts on the goal?
Yeah, it was a really great goal. As I said, just to echo your thoughts on Iwobi, it's just showing a bit of strength that we haven't seen from him, or that's been lacking in his game. He looks like he's had a couple of putting in hours in the gym just to bulk up a little bit, make sure he can hold off the man. Just a great goal from Ramsey, and exactly what we needed at that time to come in, hit them while they're still cold, and ensure that we're going to have a rocky second half and we can take control.
Do you think as well, just sticking with you for a moment, do you think that early goal was the key to that second half performance? Because if we didn't get it, do you think it was a case that we would have been, battling for a late equaliser rather than a late winner?
Certainly. I would have thought the way that Preston would have set out in the second half would have been much like they approached the first half, but we didn't give them time to even get their press in. It was just straight at them, got the goal, and they're like, right, we've got to shut up shop now because it's just going to be an onslaught. And the fact they didn't have a shot in the second half tells you how dominant we were.
Yeah, agreed. And at that stage, Ellis, at 1-1, sort of heading into the sort of latter stages of the game, were you fairly confident that we would be able to get the job done on the night?
Yeah, I think even before Ramsey's goal went in at 1-0 at half time, I was pretty confident that we could come back. And even when the first goal went in, I thought it's only a goal. It's quite early on in the game. If they wanted to sit back and try and defend the lead, they wouldn't be able to do it for however many minutes it was, 80 minutes, 82 minutes, depending on when the goal went in. So I was pretty confident that we would get back into it, and the early goal in the first and the second half, even for us, just cemented that confidence. Really, you did start to sort of worry towards the end before Giroud got his goal, and it looked like it was coming, but you never know with Arsenal. It could be one of those times when we start to bomb both fullbacks forward, everyone's pushing forward, and then you're left with the Preston counter-attacking you and Staffy lunging for a tackle, or Gabriel doing something silly, and then they're through on goal. So there was always that fear in the back of my mind that we might not go through, but I still thought that we probably would go through. I mean, Preston I don't know how they're doing in the Championship, but I wouldn't say they're anywhere near our level. We've definitely got enough quality in that squad, even with the sort of weak bench, to go past and go through to the next stage.
Yeah, Preston are doing all right. I think they're just on the edge of the playoffs, although I'm not quite sure playing football like they do. But still, that's just me being a little bit snappy. What did you think of the winning goal as well? Good work from Lucas Perez, who I'm going to be controversial in a bit, possibly, but I'm still not convinced myself. But he's, take nothing away from the lad. He's making an impression on pretty much every game he's playing, which you can't ask much more than that. Lovely piece of work to get to the byline, composure to backheel it, and the handsome French lamppost popped up and rattled another goal away. He's doing all right. What did you make of that winner and the time we got it as well?
I just thought like you said, it's a lovely bit of skill for Lucas to try the back heel. We've seen Ramsey try that all over the pitch, and it does get a bit frustrating. But when it does come off, it does look very good. It's sort of reminded me of the FA Cup final against Hull when Giroud backheeled it to Ramsey, and that was another sort of late important goal. So we definitely needed it. I think some people have been quite critical of Lucas when he's played. Other people have been quite the opposite and praised him quite well. I think we both agreed when he got his hat trick. I can't remember who he played when he got a hat trick, but we both sort of agreed that he wasn't really first team or ready for the first team just yet. You might see him coming off the bench, but I think he's staked a claim for that wide position. Really, it does look quite good. There was a game when Gabriel had given him a bit of a bollocking for not tracking back, and since then he's looked a bit better tracking back. Obviously, with Giroud's scorpion goal, it all started with Lucas intercepting the ball in front of our own box. So he's improving with every game he plays for Arsenal. He's getting used to how we play and how the English game is played, but I still think he's got a long way to go. But you can't ask for much more when he's contributing to goals and scoring goals as regularly as he has been when he's been called upon.
Yeah, agreed. You can only do what you can in the time given, I guess. So and he is doing that. Credit where credit is due. And Josh, sort of looking at it as an overall situation, obviously popping up with a late winner is always good. It's the second time in a week that we've scored late. We seem to be making a habit of scoring late, which is cliche alert, a sign of a team that could win things or championships, whatever. Overall, then, 2-1 result. We didn't play. I don't think we played well at any point in the game, to be perfectly honest. Not the way we can, but the result, that's the most important thing, I guess, at the end of the day. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you win cup football, is just get the win. You don't have to do it well. We saw Chelsea win the Champions League by not playing well. I think we just continue on that. We'll put in good performances in this competition. We're not a bad team. If you've got the strength and depth that we'll have later in the season, it's actually great to see Danny Welbeck come back into the squad and onto the pitch, get a few minutes under his belt. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it post-game now that we're through. But during the game, yeah, we were atrocious for large parts of the game.
Yeah, agreed. It looked weirdly like a jaded side, which so many changes. Sometimes it does have an effect on teams if you make a lot of changes, but I don't know. It just looked very, very jaded. But okay, so that's the result. We'll go into a few topics of note. Just to say once again hello to anyone that is joining us live. There's 100 of you out there at the moment. If you do like what we do, show us by clicking the thumbs up icon down below the box there, and give us some love. We appreciate it, of course. And of course, if you want to retweet the shows to your friends, crack on. But let's sort of have a look at some of the performances, some of the incidents in it. I just want to start with Preston. Overall, Ellis. Sorry, that's a goal in Spain. It's 2-0 to Sevilla for anyone that cares. I want to start with Preston. They, for me, they are exactly what's wrong with English football. And I'm sure that that's a bit of a sweeping statement to some, but for me, they are physical. They're direct. They're quintessentially English, managed by a bloke who I'm not sure has the intelligence to tie his own shoelaces, let alone be a thoughtful tactical manager. Complaining about fouls, series of bookings, series of challenges that, whilst yes, they were acceptable in the old days, newsflash Preston, this is 2017, not 1983, which was when I was born, by the way. What did you make of how they went about the game? Are we being sniffy as Arsenal fans to criticise the way they play? Or do you think we've got a point where we say that some of these teams just go out to kick teams off the pitch?
I think you're being a bit harsh, really. Like I said earlier, I don't know much about Preston or where they are in the league. I've never really seen them play that much, but they're obviously not got the quality that Arsenal have, and they're going to have to try and do whatever they can and play whatever way they think they can to win. And to be fair to them, it was sort of working before half time for them. They'd also got the early goal and they had a fair few chances to score more. Like, there was the one player, I think number 4, he's been a bit of a dick, and with him and Iwobi got booked for shoving him after he'd kicked him a couple of times, and that is a bit annoying. And I was waiting for Xhaka to sort of notice it and then clatter him. There was one time as well, was it Ramsey? One of their players came not through the back of him, but quite a hefty challenge. And you do see that a lot. I think we have, as Arsenal, a bit of a reputation for being a bit namby-pamby, a bit weak And a lot of teams do try that, especially the sort of, like you say, the traditional English teams will try and like kick us off the park. And the Fergie United teams of old used to do it all the time, just niggle us, give us little kicks, and it just used to get under our skin. And I think sometimes that does work if a team can play like that against us. So like the Arsenal players get a bit put off by it and a bit worried about it, and they don't really dig in. You need sort of some strong characters in there, but I think you are being a bit harsh overall. I don't really blame them for the way they played. It doesn't really bother me that much because at the end of the day we won. Maybe if we'd lost, it would have bothered me a bit. But there was only one sort of guy on the Preston team that was a bit fucked off with it, and that was their number 4. Other than that, I can't really fault their performance. It's just the way they've got to play really to try and get a result.
It might just be me being sniffy, but I just, people in this country wonder why England will never win major tournaments, and I look at the way teams like that play and I go, well, that's why, because there's a lot of... Go on, Josh.
So yeah, I've seen Preston play in the flesh twice over the last 2 seasons, and my God, they're god awful. I can't believe I've spent my money to see a 0-0 draw when they came down to the South Coast. They're absolutely awful. There's nothing about them that they don't want to play football. It's the same kind of things that we throw at Sam Allardyce for his brand of football, although he's started to try and add some flair to it now. But it is that. It was a very solid 4-4-2, 2 banks of 4, and we're just going to kick the living shit out of you. That tackle on Lucas being exactly the thing about it, especially with Simon Grayson's problems with it. The guy gets the ball, but that's not a tackle. It's it's the follow through that is the reason why he gets booked. And I think from that is probably why Preston got everything they deserved from the game today.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I say the 2 things. I'm not saying that they didn't play well, because obviously they did play well for periods of time. I would question how much of that was because we allowed them to play well. And yes, they could have been 2 or 3-0 up, absolutely, as a result of our horrendous defending, which we'll come on to in a minute. But I just have an issue with teams playing like that. And something that really bugs me is when people say, "Well, what do you expect them to do? Attack the teams?" Well, yeah, they're the home side. It's a cup game. You should sort of try and play a bit of football, entertain your own supporters, rather than just lump it forward every 5 minutes. But that's just the purist in me coming out, I suppose. And I should say as well, I'm not looking for protection for our players. I agree with you, Ellis. It's a man's game. It's not a namby-pamby game. I love that expression. But I just want the game played in a more attractive footballing way, rather than a hock and sock and kick them up in the air. Anyway, that's enough about Preston. Let's touch on some of the individual performances. Sampdoria 1-0 up at Napoli. Woohoo! Josh, talk to me about Ashley Maitland-Niles, Conservative. He's a converted fullback. Up until this season, he'd never played fullback. So I think we have to cut the kid a bit of slack and say, he's a youngster coming into a side. And Preston clearly targeted him, which any side should really, given the fact he was inexperienced. Is that potentially an area that you think can develop? Because I remember Hector Bellerin having a similar night against Dortmund and Bournemouth in a similar vein. So should we be concerned that a youngster of that age couldn't really handle the occasion today?
I think they're 2 very different players that we're looking at there with Bellerin and Maitland-Niles. I wouldn't want to say, try and compare the 2. But Bellerin had an awful game in the Champions League. That's a completely different stage to a FA Cup tie away to Preston. It's that old adage of, can he do it on a rainy day at Stoke? I think, he still doesn't look like he is a right back. He's still got some old traits that you'd see from a right winger. Especially, as I said before, with his tracking back, he just was giving up midway through. His positioning wasn't great. And I think Mustafi isn't in the position at the moment where he can afford to be talking a player through a game. I think that's where most of it came from. And also in front of him, Lucas, as great as his forward movement is, and he is absolutely superb, the fact he wasn't protecting that guy just meant he got absolutely arse raped through the whole game. And that's probably what happened at half-time. I can't say what Wenger said to them, but he probably said something to Lucas to say, mate, help your right back out, because he's getting destroyed. And that's where all the good things from Preston was coming from. And fair play to Preston for using it, but we need to be a little sharper about it and help them out.
Agreed. And, as I say, like Hector Bellerin came to the club as, almost a right-sided midfield player with an ability to play at right back, and he's been converted. And I think Ashley Maitland-Niles is clearly not a right back right now. He's learning his trade, and hopefully he will come on. And I say, we're not for a minute saying he's not good enough or he's doomed to failure, all that. It's just today he was exposed, and as you say, the Lucas thing didn't help. We'll touch on Lucas individually as well in a moment. Ellis, I want to go on to another area of the pitch now, and that's the defence. I think we can give Mustafi a bit of a pass today in the fact it's only his second game back. He clearly he looks rusty to me. He looks like a player who is getting back up to speed. Some of his distribution was not the best today. But I simply want to make this statement to you, and I want your views. For me, Gabriel is nowhere near good enough for Arsenal. Thoughts?
Begrudgingly, I think I'd have to agree with you on your statement about Gabriel, and also with Mustafi. Like you say, it's his second game back. Obviously, his first game was against Bournemouth, which was a bit of a shit show defensively as well. And am I right in saying is this the first time they've played together, or have they played together before, Mustafi and Gabriel?
I think this is the first one. If not, it's only been once or twice before, if at all.
Yeah, so you've also got that to factor in as well. But having said that, they train together every week, so you'd think they'd have some sort of understanding. I suppose Gabriel's also been playing on that sort of right-hand centre-back with Koscielny, so he's now changed over to there, but people have said that's probably his better position. But yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. When we first signed him, he looked all right, he looked up for it, he looked like a player that we needed, someone who's not afraid to get stuck in. But his communication, whether he's speaking the English language or not, but it's just a general communication, the way he sort of communicates, the way sort of like the first goal is quite badly at fault. I know he has that sort of lucky sort of deflection off and it lands right to the pressing player's feet, but before he even gets to that position, the back four, except from him, are all in line together. Even Maitland-Niles, who we've just said he's probably not a right back, he's learning his trade, are all sort of together, and he's playing the guy on the side, and he doesn't know whether to track the guy making the run or the guy that sort of Monreal sort of left. So there wasn't really much communication between the two of them or the back four in general. But if you're going to go to individuals and blame him, like for me, Gabriel. A lot of people, when Mertesacker had that sort of dodgy patch last season, a lot of people were clambering for Gabriel to start over Mertesacker. But when you compare the two, other than sort of pace, what is Gabriel better than Mertesacker at the time? Obviously now he's fit, so that's the reason why he's better than him. But maybe when Mertesacker does come back and he's a bit more fitter, he might still be there or thereabouts. He's probably a better option than Gabriel purely because he communicates better with Koscielny. I'd imagine he would communicate better with Mustafi, both being German and playing in the national team previously. You'd think they'd work better as a pair. But Gabriel, for me, he's just not quite at Arsenal's level. And I'd be inclined to get rid and get someone... Well, James is doing quite well at Middlesbrough, isn't he? So maybe we would need to get another reserve centre back in. We can probably bring him back and recall him at the end of the season, and then he can be the player that plays if Koscielny or Mustafi are injured. But for me, I don't think Gabriel is good enough for the Arsenal team. I agree with you.
No, I agree, and I'll get Josh's thoughts in a second on this as well, because I was listening to Ray Parler's autobiography on audiobook the other night, and he talks about when Arsenal signed Igor Stepanos, and he said that Arsene Wenger watched him at a trial, and they were basically all the players who went to watch that reserve game were kind of laughing at him, going, "Who's this joker?" And then apparently on the Monday he rocked up to training, and he went, "Oh, hi lads, nice to see you again. I've signed for Arsenal," and they were all like, "Sorry, you've done what?" And they essentially just took the piss out of him. And the biggest sort of issue I have with Gabriel is there doesn't appear to be any development in him. He looks the same player now as he did 3 years ago when we signed him, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I think he's a perfectly adequate centre half in Spain because the game is a lot slower. It's a lot more passing orientated. It's a lot more shit. So I think that league suits him. I think it's a perfect league, but I think you put him in the Bundesliga or you put him in the Premier League and he's getting horribly exposed. And I just don't see any level of improvement in his game over the past couple of years, and that's a real worry for me. And he seems to give others the jitters, which is also a bit of a worry. Josh, have you got any views on this? Because we're keen to get your thoughts on this side of things as well.
Yeah, I'll take a bullet for Gabriel. I really like him as a centre back. Mainly because, and it's going to be one of those things again about centre backs playing a certain side of defence, and this is his second game in on the left hand side of the defence, and he's got Mustafi next to him, a guy that he needs to learn how to play with. I'm not going to take the guy doesn't know English as a excuse anymore, because we saw him have a massive go at the referee. I don't know what language he was talking about, but they were having a conversation as opposed to Gabriel shouting, weird things at him in, I don't know, Neanderthal. I don't know what his parent tongue is. But yeah, he's having issues at the moment. He's having a bad run of form. I'm not too sure what the plan was for how they were lying out that defence, because he was sitting very deep and wasn't great at playing the offside trap. So that's probably where we normally have Koscielny doing that job. But if that's going to be the case and it's not happening with the offside trap, change to a cover system, have both of them sitting back and say, fine, we'll just sit really deep, because we're good enough to do that. And Preston were hitting us hard enough that we didn't need to have a high defensive line, because there was no point. It wasn't there.
Carry on.
Yeah, so which centre-backs we should go into next season with, what we need is a replacement for the left centre-back position, a replacement for Koscielny. It's not Mertesacker, because Mertesacker doesn't play that side. And it's not Rob Holding, because Rob Holding doesn't play that side. It's Gabriel or Chambers, and Chambers looks the best, I think, because of his already built relationship with Rob Holding from the under-21s. I think that's probably the best group we could go into. So I wouldn't necessarily look to buy a new left-sided defender in. I'd look to get that English core and that English group of centre-backs to come through, and that's to be our long-term partnership.
Yeah, I've got a theory as well. I've got a funny feeling that when Nacho Monreal's place is potentially under threat, I mean, he's 31, I've got a funny feeling we might see Nacho moved into a centre-back role as backup centre-back when he starts to come out of the first team, if, of course, he doesn't move on. I don't expect that to be for another year or so, but he's the sort of player you can imagine us and just keeping in the squad for a couple of years, as experience, who can cover a couple of positions. So I think the biggest issue, there's a lot of people in the chat box now saying, I'm being harsh on Gabriel. I genuinely don't think I am. I think that my big issue, obviously, with the development is the big issue and the big worry I have. But my other issue as well is people are saying, oh, well, he's a perfectly good, perfectly adequate backup. Is he? I don't think he is. I don't think if you have a backup player, you sign a backup player who understands that his role might not be a first team player right now, or he might not be first choice, but he has the opportunity when called upon to do the role he is asked to do and impress, and if he does, he'll stay in the side. I don't think Gabriel has ever performed to a level where you'd go, he should stay in the side for a long term. I just don't. If people disagree with that, that's fine. It's all opinions, but for me, no, I don't see him long term. A long-term future for him at the club, particularly in a first-team spot, but we shall see. Let's go on to another one who divides opinion. Aaron Ramsey. He's not Jamaican, though, so I shouldn't have done that. Ellis, what do you make of Mr. Ramsey? Because he massively divides opinion. In the fan base, across social media, people on the street, people at the ground. He's a real divisive player. I like him as a footballer. I think he's tremendously talented. I don't know if I can ever see him getting back to the level he had before. And before anyone says it, I know he's not playing the same position or the same role, but I just don't know if his future is ever going to be what Arsenal fans want it to be, if that makes sense. What do you think, and what did you make of his performance overall tonight? Because there were patches where he looked really good, and other patches where you went, it's happening again.
Oh, you've really gone and done it now. Like, if we thought the arguments in the chat box about Gabriel was bad, now we're going to get fucking Ramsey ones.
I know, sorry. You have to do it.
I don't want to sit on the fence, so if I was going to not sit on the fence and go one way, I think I do like Ramsey. I like that he's not afraid to try the fancy things, and I think the only problem is the way the position he's sort of playing in at the moment is one of those sort of fancy flicks and tricks don't come off you a bit lower down the pitch and you can be punished for it. Whereas if the likes of Alexis Sanchez or Mesut Ozil do those sort of tricks, they're a bit further forward up the pitch, and turn it over isn't as much of a big problem because you're not instantly having to defend. But it still can be a problem, but it's just not as bad. But he's one of those players, like you say, completely divides opinion. Some people absolutely hate the guy. Other people worship the ground he walks on and think he's the best midfielder that we've got that plays in that sort of the deep line too, and he should be the one playing with Xhaka, etc., etc. For me, like you say, I think he probably could reach the height that he could because he's shown that he can do it. That season when he was hit that complete purple patch and he'd done everything right and everything was going in, I think he could potentially reach that point again. Whether he'll reach it with us, whether he'll have to make a move somewhere else to do it, I'm not sure. Like, it is hard. Like, you've got to remember, this guy's broke his leg. It's going to be hard to come back from that. Just ask some of the players that we've had, like Eduardo, Diaby, some of the other players that have broke their legs as well from other teams. Like, it is hard to come back from that. You're never going to be the same. So he's done well to just come back from that and to be the player he is. I think performance today wasn't great. Let's be honest, whose was really that? I don't think you can particularly pick too many people out and single them out because the overall performance wasn't really good enough, even though we did get the win. Like you said, he did have moments where things were working for him. He did look good. Obviously, he got the goal. It was a good shot there, but first half, especially the stuff he was trying off, like it just wasn't working. We're turning the ball over, and I think him and Xhaka do need to try and build a partnership up together. I don't know how long Coughlin's out for, but they're obviously probably going to be the first choice, I would have thought. Now he's out for a bit, so he's got this opportunity now to stake his claim and say, look, I should be playing here next to Xhaka or whoever, and I should be playing game week in, week out because I'm the best man for the job. So he's got a lot to do. I think he's still got a bit more to do today to improve on today because I didn't think he had the best of games. It was sort of half and half, really, maybe even erring on the bad side.
Agreed. One thing I have to pick up on the chat box there, and guys, you're free to put your opinions up by all means. Our good friend Mabine has said Real, Barcelona, PSG, Bayern would all buy him. Utter nonsense. I'm sorry, but that is, for me, in my opinion, utter nonsense. You really think that PSG would put Ramsey ahead of Verratti? Not in a million years. You really think Real Madrid would put him ahead of Casemiro or Isco? No chance. Bayern Munich got Thiago, Alcantara and Vidal. Nah, I'm sorry. I'm not having a go at the guy in that respect. He's clearly a very talented footballer. You wouldn't be at Arsenal if you weren't. I think my biggest issue with Ramsey in this side is that I don't think our system suits him, and I haven't thought it does for a long time. I think if we played with two holding midfielders and him in front, not in the 10, but almost with the two holding midfielders, him in front, and then two forwards or two attackers, I think that would work. I think he'd have that freedom up the pitch. Then if he did lose the ball, we'd have two proper players behind him to win it back, or we'd have the freedom to roam across sideways on the pitch. But I don't know. I'm just not convinced. But it'll run and run. It's definitely one to go into in more depth. Josh, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, just on Ramsey. I think, to echo your sentiment on the system we've put him in, I'm not sure if it's him that's trying to, or whether or not he's been told to try and dictate the tempo for the team. And I think that's where most of the criticism's coming from. If he's been asked to do it, he clearly can't do it. And if he's been told to do it, why the fuck's he trying? Because he can't do it. I think that's the main problem we've got with Aaron Ramsey. It's not in his game. When we see him for Wales, he doesn't have that pressure under him that he does at Arsenal. He is their best player. He doesn't have to perform week in, week out, and he's the second best player in the team. That's not the case at Arsenal, and he's in a very important position for us. So the team's not built around Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale. It's built around Mesut Ozil and getting the ball to him. When Mesut's not there, it should be someone like Iwobi who was playing there today, not Aaron Ramsey to try and dictate the pace. He's not there as a pivot in this system. Xhaka's in as a pivot, sitting in front of the back four. And then you've got the 10, who's also the other pivot. and Giroud is working as one to a point. But I think that's why he's got so many goals this season, is because he's got a bit more of a free role. He hasn't been asked to bring others into play as much. So I think that's the problem with Ramsey. And I think, he wouldn't work in Barcelona's system if he was asked to dictate the play. It depends on what they've got. And I don't think he'd work because they don't really need a player with an engine at that team.
No.
It's more those Bayern Munichs, the Dortmunds. Dortmund's probably where he'd fit in quite well, but he's probably not going to go over there. And while we still got him in the squad, we should probably utilise him in the best way possible.
He'd suit Man City. I'll say that much. I think Guardiola would like a player like that. And some of it has to go maybe to Arsene. Some of it has to come back to Arsene, and maybe he is trying to ask Ramsey to do a role that maybe he's not comfortable doing potentially. And again, you have to give credit where credit's due. Ramsey was the goal was excellent. His movement is pretty decent overall, I would say, throughout the game, and on the whole, his work rate is pretty good. It wasn't on Wednesday, I have to say, but overall, I think he's you very rarely question his attitude on the pitch. Sometimes players are absolutely brilliant. They just don't fit systems or teams at the time, and it's clear Arsene Wenger really likes him. So that's the way it is. And for the record, I don't agree with playing Francis Coquelin higher up the pitch either. So it swings and roundabouts. Ellis, I just want to touch on his midfield partner, Granit Xhaka. He's another one that I think I'm actually in a lone boat on this one myself. I'm not convinced. I'm really not. I think he's very ponderous. I think his passing is excellent. Always has been. Good range of passing on him. But I find his decision making at times is beyond poor. His rashness, we knew what we were getting when we signed him, so I don't think you can criticise him for that. And he seems to be very limited mobility-wise for me. He does seem to be very much like concrete man, just shoulders are out, and he doesn't seem to be able to get around the pitch as much as I'd like in a dynamic sense. Do you know what I mean? What's your thoughts on Xhaka? Because I'm just not sold yet. Maybe I'm being too harsh, maybe it's too early, but do you have a view on that? That's for you, Josh. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Ellis at the beginning.
Sorry. Or Ellis. Sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. Ellis
you
has
both
just
have
said
a say.
It's died, so he's gone a little bit skew-off. But okay. I do have some thoughts on Xhaka anyway. I would say the one thing he's lacking is that little edge of agility, which is what you're saying with the concrete man. He doesn't need to be pacey like Theo. He needs to be agile like Santi. Because Santi's not the quickest player, but he knows how to skip away from a player or skip into that. And that's where the problems are coming, because I think I've got it written somewhere where he had a little grab at one of the players. I think it was around about the 70th minute or so, where a player got past him and his immediate response was to go in and grab him and pull him down. And we're looking at a free kick in a dodgy area. And that's all down to Xhaka just missing that extra line of agility that would help him to get round. And I think that's what Wenger was saying earlier in the season, where I think he thought he'd bought a box-to-box player and has changed his mind on that and said, nah, maybe he can sit and hold. But I think that's the problem we've got with him at the moment. I think we just need to get him in some agility training just to make sure that he's a little bit quicker across the field, just in those short distances, those short bursts that football's all about, especially with that position. And then I think we've got a guy, because he's got everything else that Santi had, bar the two-footedness. It's just that agility he's missing from his game, and I think we'd be fine.
See, I'm not sure he has. I'm really not. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I'm not sure he's got that. The vision he has is very different to Santi in that he's more of, like you say, a long pass. And I do get annoyed when people say, oh, it's just long ball. It's like, it's not a long ball. If you see somebody and you ping it over the top, that's not a long ball. That is a long pass. It's, it's a deliberate area. It's not just hack it upfield and run after it like Preston.
Yeah, hit and hope. I think there's a couple of people in the chat that have named a player very similar to Xhaka with agility, and that is Jack Wilshere. If Jack stops carrying the ball as much, because Jack does drive you out of the defence with 15, 20-yard runs. Santi doesn't generally go that far. He's generally like a 10-yard run out of the way, then ping it, let it go, give and go with someone. and generally doesn't bring the field of play up as much as Jack does. But we'll see when he's back in there. Wenger will have a look at both of them. We'll see. But with word of Santi getting the extension, potentially not. Potentially that's going to be a problem again for next season.
Jack and Shaq. That would be quite an interesting combo, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I don't think they'd ever play together. Just on the side, Wenger likes to put together a balanced team. You've got two very left-footed players in the midfield, and that would cause a lot of problems for us as we couldn't open the field of play up as much as we'd like to.
I do wonder how he would look, or how Jack would have looked if we ever utilised him in the role England tried. I do wonder if that would ever have worked for us, but I don't think we'll ever see it, because to be perfectly honest, I don't think we're going to see Jack in an Arsenal shirt again. But I could be wrong. Hopefully, I will be. Just while Ellis, excuse me, settles back in. Hopefully, we'll have him back in a second. But let's look at another player, Lucas Perez. So again, another one that it's weird with our fan base, isn't it? There's either those people that want to pick on someone and sort of drag his name through the mud, and then there's other people who are desperate to hugely big up a player, probably maybe too high at times. What camp do you sit in, Josh? With I think I'll try and give it to Ellis, because I think Ellis is back actually. Lucas Perez, we're talking about, Ellis, if you can hear me. Hopefully you can.
I can hear you.
Aha, you're back. Just sort of wonder what both of your thoughts are really on are we kind of overrating his impact? I think he's been involved. It's something like, I've got the stat on my phone here. He's been involved in quite a lot of the goals recently. 6 goals and 5 assists in 12 games. I mean, you can't knock that. It's clearly very, very good. I would argue he's in the right end of the pitch, that he should be getting sort of good numbers like that. But then Oxlade-Chamberlain and Walcott have struggled too. So what do you reckon, Ellis? Are you sold on Lucas? Do you think he's developing quicker than maybe I'm giving him credit for? Or do you still have that little bit of, still early days before we can start judging?
I think so far so good, really. You can't, like I said earlier, you can't really ask for much more when he is contributing to that amount of goals and scoring those goals. Like I said, he is in the right position for it, but Ox and Theo and other players that have played in those positions have also struggled. Giroud played up front and went literally 8 games without scoring a goal. So, to be honest, with the time and the minutes he's got, he's delivering with them, really. So I think you're being a tad harsh, or maybe just a bit, I don't know, maybe that's just the way you are. But sometimes as Arsenal fans we can get carried away with players. I can remember Chambers having a really good start to the season, then he sort of dropped off, and obviously consequence of that he's now gone on loan to Middlesbrough, where he is doing quite well, but still it got to that point where he had to be loaned out. But I am pleasantly surprised. I'm under no illusions that he wasn't our first choice in the summer, was he? There was a lot of smoke and fire about Jamie Vardy, and that obviously fell through. And then perhaps there may have been even more people before him. He might have even been our 3rd, 4th choice. Who knows? But we've been critical of Arsenal and the club before, where if we haven't been able to get our first choice, we then haven't bothered to get anyone else in. So, and it's quite clear that we have needed him this season. So, yeah, I'm quite pleasantly surprised at the way he's performed. I'm not going to get too carried away, but I think we do need to give the lads some credit really for the way he's played. Like coming from the Liga in a lower sort of team in the Liga, and then coming to one of the top teams in the Premier League. It's going to take time to transition. It's a pretty big jump, depending on if you love the Liga or not. But I'd say it was a pretty big jump from. And where did he come from again?
Deportivo. Yeah.
Deportivo, sorry. So he's come from Deportivo. Like that's a big jump in terms of quality. So yeah, fair play to the guy.
I suppose I guess my main concern issue, don't know what the word is, but yeah, we bought him as a centre forward, and yet again we're playing him out wide. That's the classic way, but he does have the attributes to play out wide, and he did start, I think he started his career coming through in the lower leagues in Spain through as sort of a wide forward, so he's got the ability to do that. Josh, do you want a thought on him as well? Because I say, a lot of people have given me some stick and said, "Oh, you're just being harsh on him and you don't like him." Blah, blah. It's not about that. I just have the tracking back thing. I do get concerned about, because he clearly can do it. He did it against Palace and set up a goal. So why is he not doing it on a regular basis? And that's the only reason I can think why he's not starting. And the thing that really pisses me off about some of our fan base is the same people that get on Iwobi's back are the same fuckers that are praising Perez. Now, to me, That's double standards. Just because all the stats don't say they're doing the same role, they're doing the same role. So why is it one rule for one and one for another? It's flavour of the month for me. It just sort of bugs me. What's your thoughts on how he's progressing, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's a strange one with Lucas because at face value, when you go online, Sockaway or something like that, and have a look at his stats, then they make for very, very good reading. But it is that stuff that isn't measured. It's his tracking back. It's his work elsewhere on the field in the defensive part, which is a requirement. We haven't got him as a proper centre forward. Even if we would bought Jamie Vardy, we would have looked to got him in because of his defensive work as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one with Lucas. I can't absolutely fault his forward movement because it's absolutely superb. He's a little bit of a fox in the box when it comes to that. I think any ball in and around there, it'd be great. If Alexis wasn't having the season he was having, then we would have seen Lucas through the middle because he's got all the attributes to be a success up front. And obviously he was in his last season at La Coruña, where he got, 20 plus goals in his last season there. And we signed him off the back of that. And that's the reason we threw £17 million at him. And I would expect a little bit more from him if we're going to play him out wide. If he's no longer doing the job, if he wants to get into this Arsenal team, basically, he's going to have to play on the right wing. It's the only place I can see him getting in at the moment. With Giroud scoring, with Alexis scoring, there's no way he'll get in anywhere else. So if he wants to play for the Arsenal, he's got to start tracking back.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. One word from you both, just briefly. I got one other question, but I did want to squeeze in a little word from both of you about Danny Welbeck's return, because obviously he got some minutes on the pitch today. Good to see him. He did a lovely version of Madonna's "Like a Virgin" to Arsenal's cameraman. I don't know if you saw that on Instagram. That's well worth a look up if you want to have a chuckle to yourself in training. But yeah, good to see him back on the pitch. Just a short word from you both, really, about how much you think he can contribute to the second half of the season. Ellis, start with you.
Yeah, I think he is going to be important if he can stay fit, and if we sort of don't rush him in, ease him in, he could be very important into whatever happens at the end of the season, whether it is trying to actually catch up Chelsea and some of the leaders at the top of the pack, or whether it is going to be ending fighting for fourth again. Who knows? And let's not get too negative, but he's going to be very important for us. He was very important for us last season. To think in the Leicester game when he got that last minute winner, like he could have the same sort of impact this season. Obviously last season didn't really work out that way, but at the time it felt like a really important goal for him to score and for us to score to win the game. So who knows? Yeah, I think he will be important, especially considering if you think at the start of the season we had Alexis playing up front, and now we've sort of got him in left wing, and we've obviously got Giroud up front, and now I've got Perez fit. We have got options, all like obviously except from Giroud, Alexis, Perez, Welbeck can all play as striker or as across the front three, and even you could probably say Walker. Obviously the striker thing didn't really work out for him, but if it needs must, he could play there, but we shouldn't really have to with the amount of players that we got that can play that position. So he's going to come in handy, especially when we start getting to when we play Bayern, and if however far we get in the FA Cup, those games do start to pile up on each other, so we're going to have to rotate. So he's going to be critical for that, just to have the sort of to not drop in quality really. But it all depends if he can stay fit. He's obviously had an operation, so it's going to take him a while to get back to full fitness. And I think it is important not to rush him too much and make sure we do ease him in, because we don't have to rush him at the moment. We have got the options there. It would just be nice to have another one.
And yeah, good part to play, like Ellis says, Josh. Keeping him fit is obviously the key thing, but he's a damn good option to have, isn't he? He's a different option to have. His body type is a lot different to other players in that role. His work rate is always very good, and he's a goal threat, and nearly got on the score sheet tonight with a sort of long range dig. He's going to be a bonus if we can keep him fit, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He came on, looked absolutely stacked while he was waiting to come on. Maybe that's just the Arsenal kits that do that. But yeah, I think the only problems we've got is a good problem, which is where we play him, especially with, as Ellis has reeled off, who can play through the middle and who can play out on the wide left, because I think that's where we'd see Welbeck come in, would be cutting in from the left. I think that's where he played for United and has played for us as well. I can't see him getting the place through the middle unless we see injuries. Probably to Giroud would be the man that he would he would replace. But I'm not sure with Welbeck. I think Dom's probably best to qualify for how long we'd expect for his rehab to take before we actually see him at his full power. But I think probably the beginning of next season, but maybe that's unrealistic. Maybe that's too long. But I wouldn't expect to see him at his full powers again until late April.
Yeah, into that run. As I say, having him back in January is for me is a bonus because I didn't expect to see him much before sort of February, March. So having him even back in and around the squad is a bonus. And the more training sessions he gets in the next couple of weeks, the fitter he'll be. And hopefully, if we can get him up to speed by sort of mid-February, he'll be good for the run-in. So let's hope so. The last thing I wanted to bring up before we take questions was I just want to get both your thoughts on that lovable, handsome French bastard we've got up front at the moment, who can't stop scoring. Bless him. I don't know if anyone managed to count the seconds it took for him to celebrate a goal. Fucking wound me up, that did in midweek, honest to God. People just, and that includes you, Welsh. Yes, and you, when you listen back to this, Mr. Welsh. Oh, I don't like our players celebrating. Come on, for goodness sake. It's a bloody game about enjoyment. You come from 3-0 down, for Christ's sake. Anyway, off the soapbox. Thank you, Josh. 90 seconds. Lovely. Appreciate that. What's your guys' thoughts? Because it strikes me that we are going back to, as long as Giroud is playing, or as long as he's playing this well, he'll stay in the side, which obviously means a shift for Alexis's role and maybe a shift back to potentially what we had last season. Is that a concern, or are you happy as long as Giroud keeps scoring? Let's go reverse order. Josh, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I really want to drop him. It's really annoying because we can't because he keeps scoring. He's become a bit of a luxury player. It's really annoying because his build-up play has just somehow deserted him. He's just completely lost it. I thought that through most of the game. Just everything was bouncing off him. We looked like, and I thought we were going to play Lucas through the middle today and take a risk with the Jeff early on. But yeah, I can't fault him for scoring goals. It's just really annoying because I want to drop him. But yeah, that's all I've really got on Giroud at the moment. The magnificent bastard.
That's you off the Christmas card list of the Giroud household, I think, for next year. Ellis, do you feel the same way as Josh? Are you itching to drop him, or are you more keen on retaining him?
I wouldn't quite go as far as say I'm itching to drop him. I do feel we are, or when we had Alexis up front, and was it Wobie or Walcott or Ox or Walcott on, we do look a bit more fluid. We have more options. It's not with Giroud, you're sort of stuck with one sort of way of playing, and when he's not performing, we struggle. Whereas with Alexis up front and the other guys, you've got a much more fluid front three, and you can play balls over the top. You can cross balls in if you want, because Alexis isn't that bad in the air. He has scored a few headers in his time, so I would prefer to have Alexis up front, but same as Josh, you can't drop a guy if he keeps scoring. He's making a case for himself, but we know he is capable of going on these periods where he won't score for 7, 6, 5, 8 games or whatever it was last season. But as long as we have Alexis fit, we can then go back or revert back to what we were playing at the start of the season. So it's just good to have those options. And as long as Giroud can keep it up, then of course I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to be unhappy with someone scoring goals. Right? That's what we need. We just need to sort out our sort of midfield and our defence at the moment. Up front at the moment, we are scoring goals when we have the opportunities, which sometimes we've been bad at in the past.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm quite keen on us playing Giroud in the right games that suit his style. And I thought, Bournemouth, I was surprised he started, actually. I thought they would have gone with Alexis with the pace in that game. But, the games against your West Broms and your Prestons are the classic games that Giroud is probably right for. Maybe at home to certain sides where you want to hit them, they're going to sit deep and defend. Maybe they're the games you want to utilise him from the bench. I don't know. It's one of those. But right now, he's doing a good job. And, anyone that I think I tweeted last week and said, think what you like about him. We're damn lucky to have him. And, anyone that thinks otherwise, I don't really think particularly understand squad or the principle of having a squad. But still, it's good to have him, I think. Okay, we're going to open the lines, if you will, for questions now. I've got, if you guys wouldn't mind just whacking them in the box, I know you've put a couple in already. We've got one or two, off Twitter that I'm going to start with. So you can have one each. The first one was sent to me by Ray Fox. Top man is Ray. He wanted to ask, why is our defence so dodgy despite personnel upgrades? Is it the coaching? Ellis, you can have that one.
Sorry, what? I completely missed that. I was posting questions into the chat box while you were reading it out.
It's all right. Ray Fox, he wants to ask if our defence, why is our defence so dodgy despite personnel upgrades? Do you believe it's the coaching?
Oh, fucking hell, that's a good question from Ray, to be honest. I don't know. Like, I'm not keen to always keep bringing it back to the manager, but since Arsene Wenger's tenure, except from when he inherited that famous back four, we've never really been the best defensive teams. We've had periods where, like a few seasons ago, even if we got we had the goalkeeper with the Golden Glove, so we can defend quite well occasionally, but I think there's been a change in tact this season, because last season we did have a few clean sheets and we defended quite well, but we weren't scoring the goals. And at the start of this season, we've been scoring more goals, but we've also been conceding more. So I think that change of tact has had an influence on it. And you've also got Monreal didn't start too great. He's been a bit touch and go this season. Bellerin's obviously been injured and come back, and he didn't perform great against Bournemouth. So I think there's a lot of things going against us. We do tend to go a bit shit this time of year as well, which is another reason. But I couldn't really say, to be honest. Maybe we don't coach it enough. Maybe it's not something that Arsene Wenger focuses on. I'm not really too sure what Steve Bold does, how much of an input he has. I don't know the inner workings of the club. Who knows? But I couldn't answer it really, to be honest. I think the only way we're ever going to see it really change is when we get a new manager in place, and I don't know when that's going to happen. And if it will even change, depending on what sort of manager we do get in. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a very, very fair point. You nicely transitioned without even realising it into the next question I had, which is for Josh, which is from Carl James O'Reilly. It sounds like an wonderful Irish name. I hope he is Irish, because if not, that's going to be really offensive. Sorry. Anyway, Carl James wanted to ask, can we ask, what is Steve Bold's role? Is it shape, motivation? He seems to get a free ride. Just referring back to Ray Parlour's autobiography, reading this week, he says, and it was very interesting to read this, that Steve Bold was one of the best defenders he ever had alongside Tony Adams. You know, he said Keown was obviously great, and Lauren and Ashley Cole and all these other players he played, but he said Steve Bold is hugely influential, both in the dressing room, and he said even as a coach, he's a really sort of influential part of how the defence operates and the things he does. And Arsene just tends to let Steve Bold do the coaching for the defence. So is that the issue? You know, is Steve Bold maybe the problem with defending, or do you think it's that Steve Bold is coaching them one way and then Arsene Wenger is then saying, well, okay, that's fine, you do that way, but on the game, on the pitch, you do it my way? What do you think Steve Bold's role is, and does he have any questions to answer, shall we say?
Yeah, I think he does, to be honest. It's not a great back four, just clean sheet record we've got this season. I think we've kept 10 out of 30 something in top, in all competitions. It's not great. You'd expect better. I've been harking on about our goalkeeper. I think he hasn't helped when the back four has got breached, but I think the mix of players that we've seen come in and out of that, I think it must be quite hard for Steve Bold at this time of the season to deal with all the changes we've had in the back four and new personnel. I think he's so busy trying to drill together Koscielny and Mustafi, which is going to be our long-term replacement or long-term centre-back partnership, that we can't try and drill the other partnerships that we've seen this season, like the Gabriel Mustafi, the Gabriel Koscielny, the Holding and Chambers, the Holding and Mustafi, the Holding and Gabriel, the Holding and Koscielny. We've seen all of them play together at least once, and that's without rotating the wing-backs. I think it's just a really difficult job he's got at the moment. With a decent pre-season, and if we don't make any changes to the first team back four across the summer, then I think we'll be able to get something drilled into the team. Steve Bold will, get a little less flack from what he's doing with the squad at the moment.
I think you do make a very good point on the goalkeeping situation as well, which again flawlessly transitions us into another question. So I'll just stick with you quickly on this one because your good friend Stefan, Mr. Selby, wanted to ask about the goalkeeper situation. What was your view on the goalkeeper today? Because I have to say I'm in your camp. I'm batting with your thoughts on this one. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, Petr shit." He's clearly not, but I do think he's considerably less of a goalkeeper than he was at Chelsea. That could be because of our defence. It could be the coaching. Could be anything. But he doesn't look particularly as agile as he used to. He doesn't look as commanding. His distribution has been questionable recently, and he seems to be having a bit of a sticky spell. So I'm kind of with you on this idea of maybe if it continues, giving Ospina a prolonged run. I don't think it will happen, I should say. But did you have any issues with No Neck Frank, as John Welsh calls him today, Mr. Ospina?
Yeah, I think what Wenger said earlier in the pre-match press conference before the game started was Ospina is the FA Cup goalkeeper and the Champions League goalkeeper. I don't think as much as I want to see it, because it would be for the benefit of the back four, Ospina come in during the Premier League. I don't think it's going to happen, which is really disappointing because Cech hasn't had the greatest season. And there have been, it's not that he's thrown balls into the back of the net a la Ospina, who has done it earlier in the season, but he definitely, as you say, hasn't looked commanding. And there were a couple of points today when Ospina just, took charge in his box and was like, right, get out. I've got this. Deal with it. And had really good distribution today as well. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, that he was playing all his kicks were really good. And that was a problem that he had when he came to the club. Although he had a really good chant to go along with the kicks were awful. And that's now turned around, and whoever chanted him when he threw the ball out, I think they should be ashamed of themselves, because that was embarrassing to a point.
Yeah, okay, agreed on that one. Another area that divides people's opinions. I think for me, Ospina is the best. He's the best number 2 in the league. I don't think there's any other team that's got a keeper that good as a backup, so that's a bonus. It's whether he's good enough to be a long-term number 1, I suppose. It's interesting. Jimmy made a good point, and Anguna, about Jerry Payton doesn't help. Danny and our Steve have gone on long rants about how terrible Jerry Payton is. I've never met the guy, and I've not heard enough from people to know my opinion, but it certainly doesn't sound like the best goalkeeping coach by everything you hear. Jimmy actually had a question which just went through that I wanted to grab before I forget. He wanted to ask about Per Mertesacker. Ellis, he wants to know, does he have a role to play this season, especially with Gabriel still being a bit suspect? The latest on Per is he had a little bit of a setback with a calf problem, which I think is natural when players come back from long-term injuries. They pick up just little niggles. And I think the manager said he's sort of 3 to 4 weeks still away. Do you think he has a part to play in this season, even if it is the latter part, or do you think his part to play this season is more about the behind-the-scenes element and being a voice in the dressing room?
I think, your second point there about him being a voice in the dressing room, I think he's always been that guy. He's well known that he's the one that collects the fines for the club. So I think even with his injury, he's probably still doing that behind the scenes. And I think now with him gradually getting back to fitness and training with the guys, he's also going to have more of an influence that way as well. As for physically playing, I'm not too sure, really. He is getting on a bit. He's getting old. He's starting to get to that age where players do start to drop off, their performance levels drop in compared to what they're used to. They start to pick up these more niggly injuries. So it's hard to tell. I'd have to wait and see until when he does actually play a game for the Arsenal to see if he's still the Mertesacker he was before the injury. If he is still that guy, then I think he has got a part to play. And I know people have got different opinions in Gabriel. I think we share the same sort of opinion. Obviously, Josh rates him a bit higher than we do. But for me personally, I think he is a better defender or a better backup when Koscielny or Mustafi are injured, for me personally. But that's only if he comes back and performs the way that he used to be able to perform. If he can't, then maybe he won't be the better option. It might be time to say our goodbyes or for him to move to a different sort of role within the club.
Yeah, well said. Well said. It's yeah, I think as you said earlier on in the show as well. It's Arsene Wenger has pretty much come out today and said that him and Santi Cazorla will get new deals, subject to their legs not falling off in the summer or anything. So, and I'm all for that. I think you have to keep some continuity from, experienced players, and particularly when they're both of the level that those two are. They've still got something to give, even if it is on a temporary basis. So yeah, I would definitely keep both around if we've got the options to do so. It's not like Arteta and Rosicky, where we kept them on deals when we had no intention of playing them, which was a bit of a weird one. A little shout to Mike there from Goodison USA, who had the biggest orgasm, Lady Gooners when Giroud scored, or Jace when Rambo scored. It could have been either or, to be fair.
Definitely Jace.
Yeah, definitely. What else have we got here? There's one from Tash Nunes, wasn't there? There's a good one, actually. Yeah, all of the talk about Alexis and Ozil leaving. Do we even like Arsenal without them? Had a sniff of what we would be like today. That they are. Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, you can both have a stab at that. It's difficult to judge today because obviously we had a few younger players in and a few of the other serious players in, but it's all gone a bit quiet about Alexis and Ozil. There's a lot of talk in France, I can tell you, about Alexis Sanchez right now. PSG are sniffing. Patrick Kluivert has already held talks with the player, or at least talks with people who will get information back to the player, shall we say, to avoid the tapping up scandal. So he's interesting them. Ozil, I think, will always have suitors if the situation isn't right. So what do we think of the idea of the glimpse that we got today of not having them around? Ellis, does it worry you, or do you think Arsenal will be all right if that happens?
Of course it worries me. And at the end of the day, Arsenal will still be here when they're both gone, like it was before they both got here. But yeah, we got a bit of a glimpse of that today. Of the two, I'm more worried about Alexis, just from his sort of... The guys mentioned it quite a bit on the podcast recently. It's just come out about how his body language, the way he acts, it's been like that even when we're doing well. But it does worry me. I think if you're Alexis Sanchez and you look around at the players you've got, and you look at how we're doing, if at the end of the season we get for another season, we're in the maybe just got top 4, we haven't won anything, he's definitely going to start reevaluating his position and where he wants to be. And if what you're saying is true about PSG, if we take off our biased Arsenal hats and we are Alexis Sanchez, you look at PSG where you're pretty much guaranteed, I say pretty much guaranteed, you probably argue that, Kris, but pretty much guaranteed to win the league over there, and you'll probably get a bit further in the Champions League than Arsenal have in the last 10 years, or however many years we've been getting knocked out of the round of 16. So it is really worrying at the moment. Giroud seems to be the guy that's sort of dragging us through games. The last game against Bournemouth was really Giroud showed two assists and a goal, even though Alexis did get one of the goals. But I think he leads by example, and I think today we got a sort of glimpse of it. He was always running, he's trying so hard, and even if we've won a game 2-1 and he's had 3 chances to score and he's only scored 2 goals, he's getting angry and he's pissed off with himself. That's the sort of mentality you want throughout the club, and I think without him we don't quite have that mentality. There's some players in the squad who, when they're doing bad, their heads drop and they just go off the boil a bit, whereas you don't really seem to get that with Alexis Sanchez. It is worrying, because if we do lose him, then I think it's going to be that old chestnut that we get from the media, that we're not a big club that can retain our players. We show that we're a sort of a step higher than your sort of Liverpool, your Tottenhams, and your sort of lower top teams by attracting the likes of Ozil and Alexis Sanchez. But if we can't keep hold of them, it sort of does make us look a bit like we're in their bracket, and we shouldn't really be aiming for that. We should be even higher, I think. In terms of finances, we're probably not one of the top 3 teams, and not even there, probably top 4 team in terms of finances and attraction level. But if we can keep hold of those sort of players, we're then in a better position to attract even better players. So it is worrying if we do lose him.
Yeah, I do agree with a lot of the points you made there. And the PSG thing is an intriguing one to me, because it's a very, very good fit. It's a very good fit. Alexis is, realistically, he's not going to go back to Barcelona. He's not going to go to Real Madrid. So that's Spain out because nobody else can afford him. He ain't going back to Italy on the wages that they pay, as John Welsh has pointed out on a number of occasions. The next big team is PSG. And, whether you think it's a step down or not, he ain't going to China, let's be honest. PSG will pay him an awful lot of money. Angel Di Maria will leave PSG in the summer. I'm almost positive of that. And then that leaves them with a massive hole on that left or right-hand side, or through the middle. You could easily see Cavani drifting wide and him and Alexis alternating in that system that they play. I think there's a lot in that. Whether he want to go or whether it happens is open to debate. But I think there's a lot of smoke in that one. And I think it would be a project he'd be quite interested to take up, because PSG are not a million miles away from going deep in Europe if they can sort out the issues that what's his face Emery is dealing with. And Dom's just put in the chat room now about Draxler and for Di Maria. The long-term idea they have for Draxler is to play him in the 10 behind a centre forward. They want to play him in that role with Verratti behind and another, probably Matuidi. So yes, I don't think that's one that we can rule out at the moment.
I'd be worried about Man City as well. I think obviously with Pep being there, and they're obviously going to have lots of money to invest if they want to, and depending on how they finish this season, they're going to be out there trying to get some players, and he might look at that and think that's a better proposition than us, depending on where we finish.
I don't think he'd go to Man City just because Aguero's the guy there with, he is the man at that team. Unless they get rid of Aguero because he's not offering the work rate that Pep wants from his teams, because that's strangely one of the players that he doesn't really fancy at the moment is Aguero. He's almost undroppable because he scores so many goals, but he doesn't offer Pep what he needs.
Yeah.
And Pep wants a box-to-box striker, basically, which is Alexis, but he'd have to get rid of Aguero because Alexis wants to be Billy Big Bollocks at any team he's at, which is where PSG gets very interesting because Ibra's now gone.
Exactly.
That opens up a space for a big personality in that dressing room.
Also, Pep Guardiola is not a fan of Alexis Sanchez's style. He never has been. It's a bit of a myth that he was brilliant at Barcelona. He was great when he played, but Guardiola was always very critical of the fact that he runs himself into the floor without needing to. And whilst it's admirable for us in that Barcelona style where they want to keep the ball, Guardiola doesn't like players racing around the pitch, which is probably the reason why he still plays Fraud Yaya Toure, as I like to call him. I would never like Yaya Toure. What a waste of talent that man is. But Yaya Toure is one of those players who is perfect for Guardiola when they're getting on because he can turn it on when he fancies. And for 80 minutes, he can do fuck all and then do one thing brilliant and everyone thinks he's the world's greatest player. He's so frustrating. But that's the story for a rainy day. I'm with Jason on this one. Sorry, go on.
So I was going to go for how we performed without Alexis and Ozil
go for it,
in the club. I think we'd change the system. I've said before that I would imagine we'd move to 4-3-3. If we lose number 10, that is the perfect time for Aaron Ramsey to shine because Rambo's not a 10. He sits just behind that in basically an 8. We need him in there, and then you'd look at someone like Xhaka holding the back and probably someone like Coquelin or Jack the other side, just to balance up that midfield. That's what we'd be looking at, a post Ozil and Alexis.
We would. I totally agree. We would have to change the system if both left, or even the formation potentially. But I'm with Mr. Davies on this one. I love Alexis Sanchez. I love Mesut Ozil. To get that on record straight away. Any player that doesn't want to play for Arsenal, fuck off. Simple as that. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are. If you don't want to be at a club this big, with supporters, a fan base this size and a stadium as beautiful as ours in the area that we are, and with the ambitions that we have, then go. Simple as that. Simple as that. I don't want you at my club. If you're committed and you want to work your ass off, stay. But that's just how I feel. And as I say, I would say that about anyone, youth player or not. And speaking of youth players, we can finish on this question, actually. I think this is a good one to kind of finish on. There's another goal in Spain, by the way. Sevilla, 3-0 up. Woof. Yes, this question comes from... Who does this question come from? K-Man, 2009, K-Man. What's going on with our youth development system? No exciting kids yet in the system? Has it gone stale? It's a good question. It's one that we could go on forever, so we'll keep it brief. But Josh, let's start with you. Concerns about the youth system? Is that a bit of a worry for you? What's happening at the moment in that department?
Yeah, I think our players that are out on loan aren't generally having a great time of it at the moment. I think aside from the ones that are in the Premier League, I think everyone else on the continent isn't really having a great time. I think John Terrell's left or leaving Granada to then go elsewhere. Pesguelo is, again, not having the greatest season out there. Joel Campbell, I've seen he's had a couple of good YouTube clips on playing for Sporting Lisbon, but he's had quite a good few YouTube clips playing for Arsenal. We don't need him back, and he's not really a youth player either. We've got people like Christian Bielik who could probably do with a loan just to see what they're doing. I think we're going to bin Zelalem. I don't think he's going to stay at the club any longer because he's in the last year of his deal, isn't he? It's coming to the last 6 months.
And mysteriously missing as well. Have you noticed that recently? Mysteriously missing off of... Yeah.
He did play for the under-21s yesterday evening, but then saying that, it's because we had to pad our bench with youth players this season.
Yeah, true.
This game. So you can't... That's generally how you'd work out what our lineup was going to be for today based on what the under-21s did and who was available for them or not. But it is a strange one coming through, and it sounds like we're going to start buying in more youth players again this summer, or younger players, because they're just not producing what we need from the youth academy to supplement the first team at the moment. But saying that, we had a Wobie start for us, and he came through our youth academy. Yeah, so it's not all doom and gloom.
No, that's a fair point. And same question to you, Ellis, just with regards to the youth players. I mean, there are some positives coming out of the youth system, from what I can gather anyway. I mean, obviously everybody has their opinions. George Bird is a very good person to follow. If you don't already, that's where Danny gets a lot of his information from with the youth players. But looking down the list, that there are a few that are highly touted. I think Mark Bowler's got sort of quite rave reviews as a centre back. Ishmael Benaker is quite highly thought of. Vlad Dragomir is highly thought of. Chris Willock is one who made the bench tonight, who's very, very promising. And I think the one that I like, Yacine Fortune, although he's not really had any game time at all for anyone to judge. But what I saw him in France, I think he's a talent. The one that really stands out is Donyell Malen, who's the young Dutch forward we got from Ajax, who, if you believe what people are saying, and certainly what the reports are in Holland, he is thought of as very much the next sort of Van Persie-esque level of talent coming through the ranks, hopefully without the shittiness attitude-wise. What's your thoughts, Ellis? Any of those names, anything you've heard about those names, or do you share the concerns of others that we aren't going to be bringing anybody through?
I'm not going to lie, I'm not massively into the youth setup, and I don't really pay a massive amount of attention to it and see who's coming through. Out of the names you've just reeled off, the only one I really recognise is Willock, to be honest, and the likes of Bielik and some of those guys that you've heard about. But Danny was in the chat box a few minutes ago just saying that there are some good prospects coming through, and that's the only sort of information I get is obviously when he does the loan watch and the youth watch on the podcast. But I would echo what you said, like Wobie has come through that. Obviously, Bellerin's sort of come through that in the previous season. So it's not all completely doom and gloom. There are players coming through. Maybe it has slowed down, but I don't know. I couldn't say why. I'm not really massively worried. I think we're a club now where we can bring in players. We've obviously brought in that young guy. What's his name who's come in recently?
Cohen Bramall, yes.
Yeah, so you can bring players like that, and he's also like a young black guy who can go out. And I think Danny mentioned they need sort of the guys at the moment they're in the youth squad need a sort of loan to sort of bridge the gap from being in the youth squads to Arsenal, because it is quite a big step to go from one team to the other like that. So it's I wouldn't say it's a worry for me, because like I said, I'm not massively into it, but it's nice to see people coming through, especially if they're young English guys as well. I always like to see a young English man come through, and I was a bit envious, maybe not so much now, of Rashford when he come through at Man United. He's not doing massive. Obviously, he got 2 goals. Was it yesterday when they played, or today?
Yeah,
but
today.
He's not really been playing much regularly or scoring regularly under Mourinho. But that's just sort of what happens when Mourinho manages teams. But it's always nice to have a young sort of homegrown talent come through the ranks. But I'm not massively worried now.
Just
I'm
a
not.
quick end to that. What's the expectation? How many youth products should we have in our starting lineup that came through in a season?
Good
That's the question. Because I think that's what comes to say, is it stale? Because if you look at our starting 11, today there's, 3 players that came through the youth system?
Yeah, I think there was.
I think there was 3, just off the top of my head. No, maybe 2.
Maitland-Niles, Iwobi.
Maitland-Niles and Iwobi.
Yeah.
Ramsey doesn't count, does he? Because we got him from Cardiff.
Not really.
Yeah, true.
So there's 2 players in that starting 11 and plus the bench. But I think we're looking for first team starting in something like the Champions League, that we're looking for youth players to come through. We've got players like Jack who could get into our starting 11. I think we are bringing players through. It's just, what is our expectation? How many youth players should we see in our starting 11? Because I think it's something strange, a weird stat, like only 1 out of each year they expect to get to the first team, and sometimes it's even lower due to injuries and other such issues.
I think it was Raj, or it could have been FK. I think it was Raj. Danny might have to correct me on this, but I remember a podcast a little while ago, and someone was saying on our pod that they'd been told from a fairly high source at Arsenal, the expectation was that of, I don't know, 40 players going through the youth ranks, they expect to pull 1 out of 40, something like that. It's something like that. And I know a lot of people lost their shit about that. And I sat back and thought, actually, that makes a lot of sense.
It's quite reasonable, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And you look at the amount of players that come through Arsenal's academy and end up having good careers elsewhere. People forget about those. The Henry Lansburys, the Mark Randalls, the
Steve Sidwells.
Yeah. I mean, okay, they haven't had stellar careers, but they've still come through the Arsenal academy. So it's not like they haven't been successful. They just haven't been successful at Arsenal. And ultimately, you take a gamble when you sign a young player that they will come through. Look at Sonogo when we signed him. He was a player that we saw promise in. He was, 500 quid in a packet of pork scratchings. It hasn't worked. Well, what have you lost? Not a lot, really, for a club of our size. It's when you're signing players, of I don't know, John Obi Mikel type money at the age he was at, and they don't succeed. That's when you've got to look at your academy and go, maybe this isn't working. And the fact we're signing this kid out of non-league, he might be dog shit, but he might also be very, very good. And that's kind of the chance you take when you take a young player. And also, they can have all the ability in the world. Their attitude might not be right, and you have to let them go. So it's one that will run and run, but it's a good question. And I like you guys, I hope that we bring through players through the Arsenal academy, because it's nice when you can do that and you can have your own players and call them your own coming through. And by the way, on Rashford, don't really get the hype. I don't think he's that great. I don't know. Maybe that's just my bias coming out, but I don't think he's that good.
I don't, but at the time he was doing really well and he's flying high, and they were all loving it. It'd be nice to have someone like that with a bit more consistently come through the ranks, like a local lad. But you could probably argue that maybe Iwobi's doing that, not scoring as frequently as Rashford did when he first came through. But if he can continue to grow,
the goals sort of cloud people's judgment, don't they, as well, when it's a striker coming through the goals. But yeah. Okay, I'm going to give the final word to Paul Merson today. Not knocking the guy as an Arsenal player, legend, etc. As a pundit, fucking awful. I'm just going to play you a little bit of audio. I hope you can hear this. If you can't, shout. But I'm just going to play you a little bit of audio here. Here we go.
The FA Cup, give us 3 teams that you might have a couple of quid on. Everton, definitely.
Lost 2-1 to Leicester.
Stoke.
Lost 2-1 to Wolves. 2-0, sorry.
And I'll go Bournemouth.
Lost 3-0 to Millwall. Good stuff, Mus. Good stuff. Like it. Hopefully you could hear that. But yeah, hilarious. What was he thinking? Really? What was he even thinking? Can he think? I don't know. Maybe he was pissed. I mean, who knows? But some stellar predictions from Merce. One word answer from you all then. Who do you want in the draw? Oh, sorry. Oh, Mr. Holick is in the chat box. He said, "Turn it up." Hopefully, you can all hear that. If you can't, sorry, you'll have to go back and listen again. You probably heard that. That's the 4th goal for Sevilla. Happy days. Yes. So you can have one team in the next round. Who do you want and why, Ellis?
Cool, Christ! I don't even know out of all the teams that went through. I'd like the best thing I'd like is a sort of lower league-ish team at home, just because they can go along and it's cheaper tickets to go to. But other than that, it'd be nice to go to Old Trafford and knock United out.
Oh, I like the way you think. Another Welbeck. And Josh, anyone you'd like?
I quite like Derby County at home.
You've gone full
I
hipster
really
there, haven't
want
you?
them. Well, I don't want Brighton again because every time Arsenal draw Brighton, I can't get a frigging ticket. So if we can just avoid that and have someone else in the Championship, I'd like Derby.
Okay.
Really, just so everyone can get aboard the Will Hughes hype.
Yes, yeah. Just glancing down the teams today, obviously Man United went through, and Man City went through last night. Could do without those two. Who else we got? Brentford have gone through, Huddersfield. I mean, I'd like Argyle, but we've had them already, and because obviously when they smash Jurgen Klopp out of the cup tomorrow, that'll be funny. So that would be nice.
Oxford United.
It's a bit
Gim
dull.
would be
Isn't
happy
it?
about that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, Gim could go, or Peterborough could get Danny down there. I don't know if Peterborough went through today. I can't find them. Where are they? Are they even in it? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Luton would be quite fun. Oh no, they've gone out. I can't have them. I tell you what would be quite. I tell you what would be quite fun for the old romantic. If Wimbledon are able to beat Sutton in the replay, it would be nice for Arsenal to go away to Wimbledon, wouldn't it? Like proper old days, going to, Mr. Holics come up with a Millwall way. Yeah, I don't think I'd go to that one.
Where is it now? Is it in Kent, Millwall?
After
their ground getting basically bought up around them and basically being homeless.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. When they go around and say, can we borrow someone's stadium?
Or is it in Milton Keynes, or is it in Middlesex like Spurs? Or no, but Wimbledon would be lovely. That would be lovely fun. As Danny's just put in the chat box, I don't know why we're even talking about it because we all know we're going to get Chelsea. So it's just like, it's like the Bayern Munich thing, isn't it? You know you're going to get a big team no matter what we do. But no, I shall sit back tomorrow and probably be bored shitless by all the other games. Is it just me, or I'm really feeling this FA Cup thing now, where I just don't. It's not that I don't give a shit, because I do. But I can't get excited about other teams other than Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? I just sort of sit there and go, oh yeah, that's that game. Whatever. Don't know. The magic is dead. I blame Emirates. Anyway, never mind. Right, we'll leave it there. Just to plug some bits and bobs. Obviously, go and listen to the podcast from Thursday night. The Reverend Raj was back on this week with Danny and Gim, and Mr. Fife was on board as well. Excellent listen as always. Jimmy Slate was the other guest as well. Do listen out towards the end. There's a lovely sort of domestic between Danny and Gimli. It is box office. Those two together are like. Well, they're like fish and chips. They just work. So I do listen to that. And listen to the extras where you will hear Danny talking to himself. Yep, that happened. So do listen to that. There's a blog up at the moment. Frantically searches for ABW blogs because I can't remember. I'm sure it's Drew's that was last up, but I will just double check. I do this every week. I'm really sorry, OG, if you're listening. It is indeed Drew's blog, which is on Alexis's versatility. Oh, Christ. I'm glad I don't drink. I'd never get that out. It's on Alexis, so read it. There you go. At the Bergie blogs, our thanks to OG for his sterling work on the blogs, and of course to Drew as well. It's Mr. Hollick's birthday next week. Danny's just informed me. So happy birthday in advance to him. It's my birthday on the 25th of January. I'm giving you all as much notice as possible. If you want my postal addresses to send parcels, no problem. Just drop me a line and I'll send you that. I only take expensive presents, so make it a good one. Thank you. No, Gaz, I will not be talking to you about that under any circumstances. If you're not seeing the chat box, lucky you. And finally, personal plug for me, I will be appearing with our good friend Mike, who's in the chat box at the moment, at the Gooners in the USA podcast. I'm going to do a little piece with them tomorrow, Sunday night, which I presume will be out tomorrow or Monday. So if you like me, my sympathies, but I'll be appearing with Mike and Andy on their podcast tomorrow, so do tune in for that. And if you like European football or English football, you can also tune into the Football Hipsters podcast, which I'm also the owner of, and Josh appears on that with me on a Sunday night, as does Ross and Drew and John and the team. So yeah, if you like what you hear from me on here, then give our other podcast a go. Right, that's all the plugging done. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us, and thank you again to Ellis and to Josh. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for
having
having
me
us on. Not Josh, though.
Not just though.
Oh.
Wow. So thanks to the chat box. Again, if you're listening to this in delay, if you do like what we do, give us a thumbs up or a rating on iTunes or whatever it is you listen to us on. Keep sending your questions and your feedback. We appreciate and love you all. That has been ABW Radio. We're into the 4th round where we will inevitably go out to Chelsea. We'll look forward to that, and we'll speak to you after the next game, which I think is away at Swansea. So until then, ta-tas for now.
Toodaloo.